Muslim preacher dies, returns with a shocking command from Allah. My name is Abdullah, and for most of my life, my voice was my sword. I was a preacher, a da'i, a caller to the path of Islam. I was not a quiet scholar or a contemplative mystic. I was a warrior on the front lines of what I saw as a great spiritual battle for the soul of humanity. My arena was the public square, the university campus, the street corner, and later, the vast, echoing chamber of the internet. My mission was clear and uncompromising: to defend the truth of Islam against all other ideologies, to expose the flaws in other religions, and to call people to the one, true, and final path. I saw faith as a fortress, under constant siege from the forces of secularism, Christianity, and every other ism you could name. My job was to be a sentry on the wall, to sound the alarm, to wield the sword of logic and scripture against any and all challengers. My God was a victorious king, and I was one of his most zealous soldiers. I excelled in debate. I could dismantle the arguments for the Trinity with surgical precision. I could quote the scientific errors in the Bible from memory. I could expose the logical fallacies of atheism with a confident, often cutting wit. My followers, a growing army of online supporters, loved me for it. They saw me as a champion, a modern-day Saladin fighting with words instead of swords. My wife, Maryam, however, saw a different man. She was a convert to Islam, a woman who had come to the faith not through debate, but through a profound experience of peace and belonging she found in the Quran. She loved my passion, but was often pained by my methods. "Abdullah," she would plead with me, "you win the argument, but do you win the heart? You leave them with no answers, but do you leave them with any love?" I would dismiss her concerns as emotional, as a woman's soft-heartedness that didn't understand the harsh realities of the battlefield. My son, Jamil, a gentle soul studying to be a teacher, found my public persona deeply unsettling. He avoided my videos, and when we spoke, a polite but firm wall would come up whenever the topic of my work was raised. I thought he was weak, that he didn't have the stomach for the fight. I believed my certainty was strength, my aggression was passion, my intellectual victories were victories for Allah. I was so busy fighting for God, I never stopped to ask if God had asked me to fight in that way. I was about to be disarmed, defeated, and shown that the greatest victory is not won with a sword, but with an open hand. The end of my old life came in London, in the heart of the territory I considered my primary battlefield. I had just finished a fiery, contentious public debate at a university, followed by a heated session of dawah at Speaker's Corner in Hyde Park. I was energized, my mind still buzzing with arguments and counter-arguments. I felt victorious. I was walking back to my hotel, crossing a busy street, my mind already composing a triumphant social media post about the day's conquests. I never saw the bus. The world became a sudden, violent cacophony of screeching tires and a blaring horn, followed by an impact of impossible, world-shattering force. There was no time for pain, no time for a final prayer. My existence was simply, brutally, and instantaneously deleted. One moment, I was Abdullah, the victorious preacher. The next, I was nothing. Then, slowly, a new awareness bloomed. I was floating, suspended in the cool night air. The city lights of London were a beautiful, indifferent tapestry below me. I looked down and saw a scene of horror and chaos. A red double-decker bus was stopped at a sickening angle. A crowd was gathering, and beneath the front of the bus lay a broken, twisted shape that I vaguely recognized as a human body. My body. I felt no connection to it, no grief, no panic. It was a broken vessel, and I was free of it. I watched as paramedics arrived, as a white sheet was eventually, gently, laid over the form. I felt a detached pity for the man who had died, a man so full of sound and fury, whose last thoughts were of his own victory. The scene began to fade, the vibrant city lights dissolving into a uniform, featureless gray. The sounds of the street, the sirens, the voices, all melted into a profound and unsettling silence. I was adrift in a gray, misty, liminal space, a place that felt like a cosmic waiting room, and I was not alone. From the gray mist, figures began to coalesce. They were not demons from a fiery pit, but something far more personal and terrifying. They were the people I had debated, the souls I had defeated. They stood before me not with anger, but with a deep, sorrowful emptiness in their eyes. A young Christian student I had humiliated in a debate stood there, and I could feel the seed of doubt and shame I had planted in his sincere, if simple, faith. A thoughtful atheist I had mocked for his lack of belief stood there, and I could feel how my arrogance had reinforced his conviction that religion was a source of division and cruelty. A Jewish rabbi, a kind and scholarly man whom I had aggressively cross-examined, stood there, and I could feel the way my disrespect had wounded his spirit. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their silent, sorrowful presence was the judgment. This was not a place of punishment, but of consequence. I was being shown the true harvest of my life's work. I had not been planting seeds of faith. I had been sowing dragon's teeth of resentment, pride, and spiritual injury. The realization was a cold, slow-motion horror. My entire life, my entire mission, had been a catastrophic failure. The sorrowful visages of my spiritual victims faded, leaving me alone in the gray, featureless mist. A new presence began to form before me, a being of pure, unadulterated arrogance. It was a perfect reflection of my own soul. It wore my face, spoke with my voice, but it was magnified, a grotesque caricature of my own pride. So, the great warrior has fallen. It sneered, its voice dripping with the same sarcasm I had so often used on others. Look at your works, O mighty Abdullah. You fought for the king, but you never once asked the king for his battle plan. You wielded a sword you forged yourself, in your own image. You thought you were a lion of God, but you were just a noisy dog, barking to hear the sound of your own voice. Every word was true. Every accusation was a dagger in the heart of my memory. You sought to destroy the faith of others. The phantom of my pride continued, circling me like a predator. You thought their beliefs were idols, standing between them and God. But your own idol was the biggest of all. Your own intellect, your own certainty, your own righteousness. You worshipped your own reflection in the shield of Islam. I tried to fight back, to argue, but here, in this place of stark truth, I had no defense. My logic was a weapon made of smoke. My scripture was a shield of glass. I was utterly, completely, and irrevocably defeated. The terror that gripped me was not the fear of hellfire. It was the terror of utter worthlessness. The chilling realization that my life, lived with such passion and conviction, had not only been a failure, but a net negative in the spiritual economy of the universe. I had not served God. I had served my own ego, dressed in the pious clothes of religion. The phantom of my pride laughed, a cold, empty sound that echoed in the void. "You have no good deeds," it declared with finality. "Your prayers were tainted with pride. Your charity was a public performance. Your dawah was an exercise in self-aggrandizement. The scales are empty. There is nothing to weigh." In that moment of absolute despair, stripped of my mission, my identity, and my self-worth, a single, forgotten memory surfaced. It was a memory of my wife, Mariam, praying in the early morning, her face wet with tears. She was not praying for my victory in debate. She was praying for my heart. From that memory, a cry of pure, broken anguish tore through my soul. It was not the confident call of a preacher, but the desperate, hopeless whisper of a condemned man. It was a single word, a name I had used as a weapon, but now I whispered it as a plea. Allah. It was the smallest of sounds in the vastness of the void, a final, flickering ember of a soul about to be extinguished, and yet it was enough. The gray mist around me began to shimmer, to glow with a soft, nascent light. The phantom of my pride, the reflection of my own ego, recoiled, its form dissolving like smoke in a breeze. The light was not coming from outside. It was emanating from within the mist itself, as if the very fabric of this desolate reality was being infused with a new and powerful life. The light intensified, coalescing into a brilliant, golden warmth that pushed back the gray, not by force, but by its very nature. The oppressive silence was broken by a sound, a low, resonant hum that was the most beautiful music I had ever heard. It was the sound of pure, unadulterated peace. I was not looking at the light. I was immersed in it. It was a living ocean of pure love, and I was a single, undeserving drop held within its infinite embrace. This love was not an emotion. It was the fundamental reality of the universe. It knew every arrogant thought I had ever had, every cutting word I had ever spoken, every moment of pride and self-deception. It knew all of this, and it held me anyway, without condemnation, without judgment, with a tenderness that shattered my broken heart into a million pieces and then reassembled it whole and new. From the heart of this infinite, loving presence, a voice spoke. It was not a sound that entered my ears, but a truth that bloomed in the center of my being. It was a voice that held the power of a billion supernovas and the intimacy of a lover's whisper. Abdullah, it said, and my name, spoken by this voice, was not an accusation, but a reclamation. It was the sound of the Creator calling his lost creation home. You were a warrior fighting in a war that did not exist. Lay down your sword. You are home. All the fight went out of me. All the pride, all the arrogance, all the years of intellectual combat dissolved into nothingness. I was a soldier who had just discovered that the enemy he had been fighting his whole life was his own shadow. The relief was so profound, so absolute, that my soul could only weep in a silent, joyful surrender. Before you can understand the mission that awaits you, the voice of the beloved communicated, its love a constant, unchanging truth. You must first understand the life you have lived, not through the lens of victory and defeat, but through the lens of my love. My life began to replay, but with a horrifying and beautiful new clarity. I was back at Speaker's Corner in the midst of a heated argument with a young woman, a self-proclaimed Wiccan. I remembered the triumphant feeling as I dismantled her beliefs, mocking her faith in nature and cycles. But now, I was her. I felt her deep, genuine connection to the earth, her sincere awe at the turning of the seasons. I felt the pain of my mockery, not as an intellectual sting, but as a physical blow, a violation of something sacred to her. I saw that I had not offered her a greater truth. I had simply trampled on the small piece of truth she had managed to find. The scene shifted. I was in an online debate forum, typing furiously, crafting a devastating rebuttal to a Hindu man's explanation of Brahman. I felt the intellectual thrill of the takedown. But now, I was him. I was a devout man, trying his best to explain the ineffable, to share his experience of the divine unity that underlies all things. I felt the sting of my cold, dismissive logic, the way my words had been a hammer, shattering his delicate vase of faith, leaving him feeling foolish and exposed. I had not brought him closer to the one God. I had made him feel that his experience of the one God was a delusion. I saw my wife, Mariam, watching one of my videos, a look of profound sadness on her face. I had always interpreted her sadness as a lack of strength. Now, I felt what she was feeling. She was not sad because I was losing a fight. She was sad because of the way I was winning. She saw the spiritual violence I was committing, the wounds I was inflicting in the name of God. She was weeping for the very souls I was attacking. This life review was a gallery of my own spiritual crimes. It was not a judgment of fire and brimstone. It was a quiet, devastating, and deeply sorrowful revelation of my own blindness. I had been a warrior for a God of truth, but I had forgotten that the highest truth is love, and a truth spoken without love is the most dangerous lie of all. When the life review ended, I was left in a state of shame so profound it was a physical sensation. My entire identity as a warrior for Islam was a monument to my own ego. My Lord, my God. My spirit cried out. My sword was poison. My victories were defeats. What have I done? The voice of the presence was not a voice of condemnation. It was a voice of gentle, powerful, and radical re-education. You sought to defend my honor, it communicated. But my honor needs no defense. A lion does not need a dog to bark on its behalf. You sought to bring people to my house, but you did so by setting fire to their own homes, and then you wondered why they would not follow you. You thought the greatest sin was shirk, the associating of partners with me. You were so busy fighting the idols in the beliefs of others that you did not see the idol in your own heart, the idol of being right. This truth pierced me to the core. My entire mission had been based on a false premise. What, then, is the greatest sin? I asked, my soul now a humble, empty vessel, ready to be filled. The answer was the most shocking and transformative revelation of my existence. The greatest offense to a God who is pure love, the voice declared, is not a mistake of theology. It is a failure of kindness. It is the wound you inflict on another of my children in my name. It is the door of my mercy you shut in a seeker's face. It is the judgment you pass on a soul that I am still creating. For in judging them, you have presumed to take my place. In hurting them, you have hurt me. I then saw a vision that turned my entire understanding of faith on its head. I saw the earth, and I saw people of all faiths, all paths, all traditions. I saw a Christian woman in a small village, selflessly caring for the sick. I saw a Buddhist monk in a monastery, radiating a palpable peace that calmed the souls of those around him. I saw an atheist scientist, working tirelessly out of a pure love for humanity to find a cure for a disease. And I saw that from each of these souls, a brilliant thread of pure, golden light was extending upwards, connecting directly to the heart of the divine presence. Then I saw a man, a preacher like myself, delivering a fiery sermon, condemning all other paths, his face contorted with righteous anger. And from him, I saw a thread of dark, heavy smoke that rose a few feet and then dissipated into nothing. The message was unmistakable. The currency of heaven was not correct theology. It was sincere love. This vision shattered my world. The fortress I had spent my life defending was a prison. The sword I had wielded was a tool of vandalism. The war I had been fighting was a civil war, a battle against my own brothers and sisters, the other children of God. But the Quran, my mind feebly protested. The final revelation, the straight path. The Quran is a rope I have lowered into the world to pull my children towards me. The voice of the beloved explained. It is a rope of mercy, a rope of guidance, a rope of love. You, and many like you, have taken my rope and used it to whip those who are holding on to other ropes. You have used it to tie knots of complexity and judgment, to exclude rather than to include. You have become so obsessed with the rope that you have forgotten the one who is holding the other end. I saw it with perfect, painful clarity. My life's work had been a perversion of my own faith. I had turned a message of mercy into a declaration of war. A new feeling began to replace the shame. A burning, desperate desire to undo the damage I had done, to somehow set things right. Then what is my mission? I asked, my soul completely surrendered. What is the true dawah, the true call? The voice then spoke the words that would become the foundation of my new life, a command so shocking and so contrary to my old self that it felt like a sacred joke. Your mission is not to preach, the presence commanded. Your time for speaking is over. Your mission is to listen. Go back, Abdullah. Go back and find the ones you wounded. Find the Christian you shamed, the atheist you mocked, the Hindu you belittled. Find them, and do not speak, do not correct them, do not call them to anything. Simply sit with them, listen to their stories, learn their hearts, see my face in theirs. Your dawah will now be a dawah of silence, a dawah of humble, loving presence. You will be a warrior for kindness. You will be a soldier of listening. This is my command. The command was terrifying. It required the complete death of my ego, the annihilation of the man I had been. But it was also a liberation. It was the only path to redemption, the only way to heal the wounds I had caused. My soul, broken and remade, consented. Yes, I whispered. I will. The moment of my consent was the moment of my brutal re-entry. There was no gentle transition, no peaceful return. I was hurled from the infinite embrace of the light, and slammed into the mangled, agonizing confines of my physical body. A shock of pure, unadulterated pain, like a million volts of electricity, surged through me. A desperate, ragged breath, the first breath of my new life, tore through my lungs. My eyes flew open to the chaotic, flashing reality of an ambulance. A paramedic with a startled face was staring at me. "He's breathing! He's got a pulse! How is that possible?" he yelled to his partner. The next weeks were a blur of beeping machines, hushed doctors, and the constant, loving presence of my wife, Mariam. They called my survival a Lazarus phenomenon, a medical mystery beyond all explanation. My body was broken in a dozen places, but my mind, miraculously, was clear. Mariam never left my side. When I was finally able to speak, I looked at her, my eyes filled with tears of regret. "Mariam," I whispered, my voice a broken rasp. "You were right. All along, you were right." She didn't say, "I told you so." She simply kissed my hand, her own tears falling freely. "The God of love has brought you back to me, Abdullah," she said. "The real you." My son, Jamil, was a different kind of challenge. He was relieved, overjoyed, but deeply pragmatic. He listened with a teacher's patience as I tried to explain my experience, my new mission of listening. "Dad, that's great," he said, his voice gentle. "It's like a form of restorative justice. It's a healthy psychological response to the trauma and your own subconscious guilt about your aggressive style. Whatever the source, if it makes you a kinder person, I'm all for it." He accepted the fruit, but he could not accept the tree it grew from. The greatest challenge, however, would be the command itself. How could I possibly find the people I had wounded? The internet is a sea of anonymous faces and fleeting encounters. The task felt impossible. But the command was absolute. I was a man under new orders. The warrior was dead. The listener had to be born. My physical recovery was long and painful, but it was a holy time, a period of quiet reflection and the shedding of my old skin. My online empire crumbled. My followers, confused and then angered by my silence, and then by the rumors of my change of heart, branded me a sellout, a heretic, an apostate. The hateful comments, the threats, the accusations, they were a faint, distant noise. They were no longer my concern. My concern was the command. With Mariam's help, I began the impossible task. We scoured old debate footage, old online forums, trying to find names, to trace digital footprints. It was a painstaking, often hopeless process. But then, a small miracle. We found the name of the young Christian student I had humiliated in a university debate years ago. His name was Ben. He was now a pastor in a small town in the north of England. I knew he was the first step. With a trembling heart, I wrote him a letter. I didn't ask for forgiveness. I didn't explain my vision. I simply said that I had been wrong, that my conduct had been un-Islamic and unhuman, and that I would be in his town on a certain day, and if he were willing, I would be honored to just sit with him for a while, to listen to his story. I expected no reply. 2 weeks later, an email arrived. It was from Ben. "Dear Abdullah," it read. "Your letter was the biggest shock of my life. I will be at the coffee shop across from my church at 10 a.m. on the day you mentioned." The journey to that small town felt like the longest journey of my life. I walked into the coffee shop, a broken man with a cane, and saw him sitting at a table in the corner. He looked older, his face kind but weary. I sat down, my heart pounding. For a long moment, there was only silence. "I'm sorry," I finally said, the words feeling utterly inadequate. He just nodded, his eyes searching my face. And then, I did as I was commanded. I fell silent. I asked him about his life, his church, his faith, his family, and I just listened. For 2 hours, I listened as he spoke of his own struggles with faith, of the joy he found in his community, of the beauty he saw in his Savior. I didn't argue. I didn't correct. I didn't preach. I just listened, and for the first time, I saw him not as an opponent, but as a brother, another child of God, on his own path. When we parted, he shook my hand. "I don't know what happened to you, Abdullah," he said, a look of wonder in his eyes. "But the man I met today is not the man I met all those years ago. Thank you." I walked away from that coffee shop with tears streaming down my face. The work had begun. The healing had begun. My life is now a quiet pilgrimage of listening. I am no longer a preacher. I have no followers. I have no grand platform. My life is a series of small, quiet encounters. I found the atheist I had mocked. He is a philosophy professor now. I attended one of his lectures on humanism, and afterwards, I simply thanked him for his passion for humanity. I found the Hindu man, and we shared a meal, and I listened as he spoke of the divine dance of Shiva. Each encounter is a humbling, sacred act of obedience to the command I was given. I am a warrior in a new kind of army, an army of listeners fighting a new kind of war, a war against the noise of our own certainty. And so, I feel I must speak to you now, not as a preacher, but as a fellow traveler, a witness who has returned from a great and terrible and beautiful journey. You who are so certain of your path, you who are so passionate in your defense of your truth, I ask you, I implore you to consider this. What if the highest form of worship is not to speak, but to listen? What if the greatest act of faith is not to correct, but to connect? What if the most powerful prayer is not the one you recite, but the one you hear in the heart of another? The world is full of swords, of arguments, of voices shouting to be right. We do not need another warrior. We need healers. We need listeners. We need bridge builders. I am telling you with the certainty of a man who has stood in the presence of divine love, that God is not honored by the walls we build in His name. He is honored by the tables we build, the tables where we can sit with those who are different from us and listen to their stories and see the face of our Creator in their eyes. This is the shocking and simple and world-changing command I was given. Lay down your sword. The war you are fighting is against your own family. The victory you seek is found not in the defeat of another, but in the loving embrace of them. Stop preaching. Start listening. The voice of God is speaking through the hearts of all His children. Are you quiet enough to hear it?